Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness podcast. I'm here with co-host Walter Dials, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the Exit Readiness podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building sellable or transferable business value, and then for planning your eventual exit from the business. If you've listened to us at all in the past, you've heard us mention the certainty that all business owners are going to stop being business owners at some point. And so there's no better time to begin planning for the inevitable than right now, the present. The earlier you start planning, the more options you're going to end up having for a successful exit. However, what we've come to realize, because we're smart guys, is that like any other strategic plan, it can be tough to know how and where to get started, particularly with an exit planning strategy plan. So it's become our annual practice here at this time of the year to publish an episode that'll help you know how to get started in the new year. So our topic today is an exit planning checklist for 2024. And the checklist has three categories. Number one, decide where you want to go. Number two, assess where you are currently and analyze any gaps between where you are currently and where you want to go. And then number three, design and implement a plan. And so, Walter, let's get started here with category number one, decide where you want to go. What comes to your mind immediately when it comes to planning for that category, deciding where we want to go?
I think what comes to mind for me is a topic we covered, I don't know if it was earlier this year or maybe last year. I thought it was really good. Was the whole concept of when you're thinking of what your next act is, are you reacting to factors that are pushing you out of the business or factors that are pulling you out of the business? And I think it's a good time, it's always a good time now to just reflect back on the year. And is your business starting, did you have a frustrating year? So now you're thinking, I got to sell, which probably is not the best light to be in. Or have you discovered some things that are pulling you out of the business? Maybe you've joined a new church and there's some activities there you'd like to do, or maybe you've taken up a new hobby you want to pursue or something like that. So I think it's a good time to think about your motivation for exiting the business at this time of year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pushes and pulls. What we have found in others too, doing the work that we do, is that the owners who are more motivated to leave by the pulls than the pushes end up being happier once they're gone. Because oftentimes those pulls are as Walter pointed out, new interest that you have a desire to invest time, resources in, and it's just something that you become really interested in. And as we've said many times here before, having a plan for life after the business is absolutely essential for a successful exit, because 75%, the statistics are 75% of owners who leave within 2 years, they're not happy. And a big reason for that is they have not constructed or created a plan for life after the business that's going to replace the significance and the impact that you had as a business owner. And so back to Walter's point about the pushes and pulls, those pulls often represent significant things that can and do have an impact, and it can be very helpful to you in creating that plan for life after the business.
Yeah, those are really good points. Something else that pops in my mind is, especially if your initial plan for exiting was to transfer your business to key employees or management group, what's transpired in the last year in that regard? Have you were you counting on someone and now they've left, or maybe they've changed their mind about taking over the business? They don't want the responsibility. Or on the positive side, have you brought in some new management people who you're really excited about because they have a lot of potential to take over the business? So I think it's important, whatever your strategy was, to evaluate your prior year in light of that strategy.
Yep, good advice. And that aligns with just, again, thinking through, when do I want to leave? Who do I want to transfer or sell the business to? Is it the same person or persons or company or whatever it is that I was thinking this past year, or has that changed? And if it has changed, what do I have to do differently in this next year in planning for that? So when do you want to leave? Who do you want to transfer or sell the business to? And then, you're going to have financial goals, of course, that you're going to work out with your wealth advisor. Financially, what are you going to need when you leave? Yeah, more than likely, you've got a very nice standard of living currently. Most successful business owners do. And are you going to need to replace it at that level, a level lower, level higher, whatever it is? Have you worked with your wealth advisor to crunch the numbers and do a financial gap analysis as to, okay, this is I'm going to need 4X, and right now I have 3X. So where's the other X going to come from? And so you may have to adjust your goals, either financially or your timing. And then, Walter, would you say anything about tax planning when it comes to the financial planning piece?
Well, I think, you always want to be, there may not be any concrete steps you need to take right now, but you always want to be aware of the tax hit that accompanies selling your business. So for instance, you might want to look at transitioning to an S Corp, and that basically means you have a 5-year window where you have to have been an S Corp to get the tax advantages of that when selling. So you need to be aware of that. We always talk about taking a look at your estate plan, because there are some tax savings there if you contribute business stock maybe to the next generation of your family, or even to charitable trusts and things like that. So yeah, you always need to be aware of it. And while there may not be any immediate steps to take, it's good to have it on the radar. So when it does come time to pull the trigger, you've kind of got your ducks in a row.
Yeah, and so again, deciding this category, deciding where you want to go, Walter just hit on a couple of common values-based goals, if you will, that we see, and that is minimizing taxes. Most of the owners we work with have a real conviction, if you will, maybe an aversion to paying taxes, and so if that's one of your goals, then just make sure that you're planning for that. And then also other values-based goals might have to do with your employees. What does caring for them look like when you leave? They've helped you build a business. You're grateful. Some of them have been with you from the beginning. How do you want to take care of them when you leave? That's an example of a values-based goal. Another might be your reputation in the community, in the business community. Maybe it's a family business, and the brand is well established, it's trusted, it's reputable, and that means a lot to you. Or maybe it's the culture that you've worked real hard to build. All of these things need to be discovered, if you will, if you don't already know what they are, and then plan for them. So know what you want. We've heard from not a few investment bankers or business brokers that it's not unusual for a business owner to get to the deal table and the deal goes sideways because it's at the deal table where they're deciding these things. They're deciding these values-based goals kind of things and legacy goals kind of things. And they hadn't thought through it prior, and now they are at the deal table, and it goes, and the deal just doesn't get done. Anything else you can think of regarding values-based or legacy goals, Walter?
No, I think you covered that. The other thing I was going to mention, not related to that, would be, we always encourage business owners to have a business continuity plan in place. And end of the year is a good time to review that, because some of the people who you've mentioned in there, who are going to take over certain responsibilities might have to change, or maybe your banking relationships have changed, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's particularly important for sole owners. You do have that problem of who's going to own the business if something were to happen to you unexpected. And it's not unusual for us to have a couple of those situations, or know about a couple of those situations each and every year, where an owner unexpectedly passes away or becomes permanently incapacitated, and they're not available. So then what happens to the business? And then in regard to that, does your family need to continue to benefit financially from the business, either from an income perspective, and if so, then how's the business going to continue so that they can realize that benefit, or from a successful sale, maximizing the value, minimizing the taxes? Is that going to be necessary in order for them to live the way you'd want them to if you're no longer available? Well, there's a lot to think through there, not just who's going to actually own it, but how's it going to continue? How are the key employees going to stick around? How are you going to keep customers? Who's going to run the business, particularly if your spouse doesn't know anything about it? Is there written instructions so that your spouse and whoever's left behind knows what to do day one, month one, the first quarter, and then long term, so on and so forth? It's a big issue, big plan, and particularly for sole owners. So thanks for bringing that up, Walter. I think I was actually planning to bring that up in category 2, but here we've done it here in category 1. Another thing we've already mentioned is the post-exit plan for life. Business owners can just often regret leaving when lacking a plan for life that replaces that sense of purpose and meaning they experience in building the business. This is often neglected because an owner may have been in their business for many years, and they're just thinking, I just want to go get on my boat, or I just want to go play golf, or whatever it is. And then they do that for 2 years or whatever it is. And then it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now to make any kind of difference and to have any kind of purpose and meaning? Is there anything else that we should say about that? Have we beat that dead horse, or is there something else to say about that, Walter?
I think we've beat the dead horse, I would say.
Okay.
Important. I think it's good that we did, but yeah, I think we've covered it.
Okay. Update your personal financial plan. We mentioned that a few minutes ago, but when you're doing that, also just review your insurance program, life, disability. Make sure the beneficiaries are correct. Make sure everyone knows who owns what policy for tax reasons, and so on and so forth. So do a review of that as well. Okay, that's category 1, deciding where you want to go. Did we cover enough for this podcast, or is there something else that we should put in there?
I think that was good.
Okay. All right, then assessing where you are. For a business owner, we think it's wise to get an estimate of business value done each and every year, because it's a scorecard for how you're doing. And Walter, you want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we do think that, that's a critical step, and it's one of the first things we do in an engagement is an estimate of value. And as we talked about before, this is not a certified valuation, so it's not super expensive. Generally less than, less than $4,000. And it serves a lot of purposes. I mean, number one, it's in most business owners' lives, it's the critical piece of their financial gap analysis, because it's generally speaking, for a business owner, it's their largest asset. So they need to know what it's worth. And as we've talked about lots of times, business owners who haven't had someone objectively look at their value tend to think their business is worth more than it really is. And as we've detailed, I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. One is all businesses are unique, and business owners tend to think if their friend got 4x multiple, they're going to get at least that, even though they know nothing about their friend's business. And then the factor I think always comes into it is business owners tend to think of the gross number and not the amount they're going to walk away with, which is after taxes, after selling expenses, maybe paying off business debts. So it's really important, critical, to get a handle on what the estimate of value for the business. The other thing that is great about getting an estimate of value in this context is that the focus is not only on the estimate of value, but also the strengths and weaknesses of the business, because one of the goals of having this in hand is to know what you need to do to drive up the value of the business, what's holding you back, and where the growth areas are. So we can't overemphasize how important it is to get the business estimate of value.
Yeah, it's foundational to an effective, successful exit plan, really, because, and you mentioned it, more often than not, it's the most significant asset in an owner's portfolio, if you will. And so if the business is your largest asset, shouldn't you know what it really is really worth, fair market value to potential buyers? And we like to say that meaningful planning requires accurate data, and any meaningful exit plan requires an accurate estimate of business value. So thank you, Walter. Yeah, no, we can't overemphasize that. And then along that, so that's the beginning of assessing financial performance and drivers and health of the business and its worth and value. We also think it's wise to assess your non-financial value drivers and also areas of risk. We mentioned the business continuity plan a few minutes ago, and that's analyzing risk. Risk is if something happens to you and you can't be in the business, work in the business any longer. But what we're talking about here are non-financial drivers like, what's the condition of your management team? Do you have a management team? And is it strong enough to take the business to the next level? Are they incented to grow the business the way you want to grow it in order to increase value? Would they be incented to stick around if you transition out? So other value drivers would be how you're differentiated in the marketplace, your cash in and cash out, your how central you are as an owner to the business. This is a big one. Does your role need to change? This is often the hardest thing, particularly for founder-led businesses, is for the owner to change their role, to let go and let others take control and run the business. So just assessing and actually doing a pre-sale due diligence, and we can, if you want us to help you with that, get in touch, and we can provide you with a pre-sale due diligence checklist if you'd like. So anyway, assessing those value drivers that are non-financial and in any areas of risk, because a buyer is going to come in and they're going to do due diligence and they're going to be looking for where they're going to have to invest money to increase the value of the business and these non-financial value drivers, but they're also going to be looking for areas of risk that they're not either going to be willing to take on or be willing to pay for.
Yeah, I think that's all really good, Pat. And um, the risk piece is really important, and you're really good at emphasizing that. I usually don't. I'm not sure why, but and it's not just having adequate insurance, like you mentioned. It's like having employment agreements in place. It's having the right type of compensation plan. It's having a continuity plan in place. Have your buy-sell agreements all set up. So lots of steps, and that, de-risking, it still takes time and it's not simple, but there are certain things you can do fairly easily to help de-risk the business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's better to do these things over time rather than in 6 months or try to, because some of the things you just won't be able to do in 6 months.
Yeah.
And another reason you don't want to try to do it in 6 months is because you'll take your eye off the ball of running the business, and that could affect the final valuation. If revenue starts to dip and sales and everything because you've taken your eye off the ball because you're trying to get all this stuff done in 6 months for a due diligence process. It's just not wise. Do it over a long period of time and then stay on top of it. And then it won't take a whole lot of time and it won't take a whole lot of money. But it will cost a whole lot of money if you wait until the last minute. It could cost you the deal. So yeah, just do this over time and make sure that when the buyer does the due diligence, you're able to get slide everything across or put everything in that data room quickly, effectively, and with accurate data.
It's interesting, Pat, what you just said. I think a lot of people don't realize it, but if you wait until the last minute, it really is all consuming trying to get your deal done. Let me just tell you a little story I had this past summer. I had a client who I had done a valuation for him. He's kind of a serial investor kind of guy in closely held businesses. So he had invested in a business a number of years ago. It had done very well. He wanted to give the stock to charity. So he asked me to value it so he could get a charitable contribution for that. And that went fine. So this year he came back with a very similar engagement. And he said to me, the business it's about a $30 million business. And I said, okay, great. So he sent me all the information and I'm like, this is not a $30 million business. It's like a $15 million business. What's going on? And he said, well, the sale kind of dragged out and the people running the business took their eye off the ball. And I mean, their revenue numbers had literally dropped by 50%. So now he's trying to get a charitable contribution based on this $30 million valuation. And the past 12 months of numbers are verifying half that value. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a real life story. And it too often happens because, it's not unusual for us to hear something like, yeah, we'll call you when we're ready. Well, if you call us when you're ready, more than likely you're not going to be ready, and neither is your business, and neither is your prep for due diligence when there's a buyer. And because it does, if you try to jam this in at the end, it can cause all kinds of problems like the one that Walter just illustrated. And you don't want that to happen. And then there's this, and he said, this guy told you that the deal drug on, right? Well, that's when what's called deal fatigue sets in.
Well, it drug on and then collapsed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody gets kind of tired of it. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to go anywhere, or it's not going to happen the way the buyer or the seller, one of the two or both, had in mind from the outset.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other point I was going to make is, your business is worth the most when you have somebody who really wants to buy it. So if you're approached by an eager buyer and you haven't done anything to be ready, well, you've kind of shot yourself in the foot for that opportunity.
Well, that's exactly right. You might be attractive in some ways, and then once they get in and start looking under the hood a little bit, if you haven't attended to all these things, then they may be willing to buy you still, but maybe not pay the price or anywhere near the price that you're thinking it's worth or that you need, based on the analysis that your financial advisor did for you. Yeah. So again, if you haven't heard anything else, please hear this. Get started sooner rather than later in planning for these things so that you're ready when you're ready. Walter, you mentioned earlier reviewing the estate plan to ensure that it still aligns with your exit goals and your family financial planning and wealth management.
Yeah.
For business owners, and I'm guilty of this. I'm guilty of this. It's not fun to do. I don't like doing it. And so it's one of those things I just tend to put off. Just like reviewing a buy-sell agreement, my business partner and I, we have one of those. And we did it this year. We got it done, but it was just a pain. It's one of those things. But you got to do it. And we had to make changes. We absolutely had to make changes. And if we hadn't made the changes and something happened to one of the two of us, our current goals would not have been realized. And that could be the same with your estate plan. And then the exclusion, federal exclusion is when is it?
So the current exclusion, which is almost 13 million bucks,
right?
That's only good through 2025, and then it's going to drop to about half that.
Yeah. So anyway, review your estate plan every couple of years. Just put it in the calendar and just get it done.
Yeah.
Anything else in regard to assessing where you are? Basically, you want to you want to decide where you want to go, and then you assess where you are in all these different areas, and you do gap analysis. That's what we do. That's largely what we do, is help owners do various gap analysis on where they want to go and where everything is right now. And so what gaps need to be filled in. Okay, well then design and implement your plan. This is going to, you've got to decide, now that you know where you want to go in regard to your financial goals and when do I want to exit and who do I want to sell to, and my values-based goals are clear, my legacy goals are clear, then which exit route is going to best accomplish those goals? Which one is most going to align with accomplishing all of those goals? Sale to a third party, sale to insiders or co-owners or employees, transfer, sale to family members, sale to an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. Or maybe you just want to be an absentee owner. Maybe you have done a good job of building a transferable or sellable business, and it pretty much runs itself without you. And you're thinking, you know what? This is good life, a great standard of living. I don't have to really do anything. And I'm just going to keep it and transfer it when I die. That's a legitimate exit strategy. If that's what so the point is though, which exit strategy? So knowing the pros and the cons of each, and then which one most aligns with what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have a team in place to help you do this, then that's also kind of a starting point. Start assembling a team, and keep in mind that your usual attorney, your usual CPA they might be great for certain aspects of what you need, but they might not be experienced when it comes to transitioning a business. So it's important to have people who have experience in this area, working in this particular area.
Absolutely is. We have found that most attorneys and most CPAs, if this isn't their thing, they'll usually say so. They'll usually say, you know what?
Yeah.
Yes, I've done a few of these and I generally know what's going on, but it's not something I'm doing all the time. So you might be better served with someone where this is their practice. That's been our experience with other professionals, is they usually want to stay in their lane, whatever their lane is. And because they're really good at it and they want to continue to be good at it. But it's very important. So then you want to focus on growth and profitability today, and with that goal of maximizing the value of the business. At the very core of your successful exit plan is today's profitability and a plan for growth. And you want to strengthen those value drivers that we talked about. And we mentioned this at the outset. An owner with a sellable business is going to have more freedom in life today, because if it's sellable, then you're not central to it. And if you're not central to it, then you've got more control of your life and you've got more freedom. And so then you're going to more enjoy life in the business today. And you'll have more options for exit tomorrow. So you mentioned, Walter, right team, an experienced team of advisors. Let's see, what else? If you have a strategic financial plan for the business for growth and building value, then just keep it current and updated. It'll help you in your negotiation with whoever you end up negotiating with. If you've got a detailed plan that makes sense, is logical, and can be backed up with past performance, then you can start your negotiations at a higher place. And then too, of course, having a strategic financial plan with a budget and all is going to help you make smarter, more confident, big ticket strategic purchases and decisions along the way. So it's just wisdom to have that in place. And lenders like to see it. If your transaction, whatever it ends up being, involves lenders, they like to see a projection of the future in regard to growth and financial performance. So that's something else that's, now we can help you with all these things, by the way. Of course we can. This is what we do. So please contact us if you need help. We'd love to help you. But if nothing else, start on it yourself. You could go to exitreadiness.com. We'll mention it here in a few minutes when we close, and get some resources there. We created that. There's some virtual resources there that you can access for either free or very low cost that can help you. If you want to just get started kind of DIYing it, doing it yourself, you can do that, but you got to access some resources, and that site has some of those resources. Okay, so Walter, we've talked about the three categories: decide where you want to go, assess where you are, design and implement a plan. I mean, this is cursory and it's summary, but is there any big things that we missed?
No, I think we've covered everything that I was hoping we would cover. I guess the last thing I would just say to the business owners who are listening, if 2023 was going to be the year when you started doing some of this stuff, and you're now sitting on December 27th and you haven't, there's no point in taking any time to beat yourself up over that. Just recommit to doing it in 2024. And as we mentioned, I think an estimate of value is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, do that. Take that first step, because if you take that first step, more than likely you'll take a second step, and then a third and a fourth. Now, I mentioned, getting started with do it yourself. That's great and everything. If you can, if you're disciplined and can do it. But you're going to need help eventually. You're going to need expert help. And what we've found too is that when it comes to this kind of planning, most business owners need some level of accountability just to keep moving the ball down the field, to have targets and milestones and, a plan in place, and then someone who you're meeting with regularly and talking about it and making sure it's getting done. That's another way in which a firm like ours can add value. So anyway, all right, Walter, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close out. If there's nothing else that comes to your mind.
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, in closing then, folks, listeners, let us again strongly exhort you to begin planning today for that eventual exit. It's going to take longer than you think. And if you want help in executing the exit planning checklist we've just provided today, or anything else in regard to exit planning, you can contact us at email. You can contact Walter at 301-951-9090 and me at 301-859-0860. And if you go to exitreadiness.com, that website I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, and you establish an account for online resources and you purchase something there, if you use the code podcast, you'll get a 10% discount. Again, the resources are either free or very low cost, so you're not going to pay much anyway, but you can get a 10% discount with the code podcast. So until next time on the Exit Readiness podcast, this is Pat Ennis and Walter Dial signing off.